The first-class cabin of Zenith Airlines Flight 422 was a temple of quiet luxury. The lights were dimmed to a soft golden hue, the leather seats whispered of Italian craftsmanship, and the air carried the faint, expensive scent of bergamot and clean linen. Julian Thorne sank into seat 1A with a quiet sigh, the supple leather contouring to his frame. At 47, he commanded Apex Global, a multinational conglomerate that owned, among other things, Zenith Airlines. But tonight he was just a weary traveler, grateful for the sanctuary of a first-class seat on the red-eye from New York to San Francisco. He wore his standard travel uniform, a simple black cashmere hoodie and dark jeans, and carried only a slim laptop bag. The billion-dollar deals could wait. For the next 6 hours, he just wanted silence and sleep. He didn't get it. A flight attendant, her name tag read Dana, paused beside his row, her polished smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Sir," she said, her voice a carefully modulated blend of condescension and feigned politeness. "This is the first-class cabin." Julian looked up from his phone, where he'd been reviewing a quarterly report. "I'm aware," her smile tightened. "I'll need to see your boarding pass, please." He held up his phone, the digital ticket clearly displaying Seat 1A, Julian Thorne, first class. Dana studied it for a moment too long. "There seems to be some confusion. This seat is supposed to be occupied by a different passenger." "It's occupied by me," Julian said, his voice calm but firm, the same tone he used in boardrooms when stating an indisputable fact. The veneer of politeness cracked. "I'm going to have to ask you to come with me so we can sort this out." A few passengers in nearby seats pretended not to listen, but Julian felt the weight of their sideways glances. He knew this dance intimately, the subtle, insidious disbelief that a black man in casual wear could possibly belong in the front of the plane. He had faced variations of it in Ivy League lecture halls, in exclusive country clubs, and in the corporate offices of companies he would later acquire. It was a familiar, wearying burden. Before he could respond, the cockpit door opened and Captain James Riggs emerged. He was a man in his late 50s, his uniform impeccably pressed, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expression one of unquestioned authority. Dana hurried over to him, whispering urgently and gesturing toward Julian. Riggs listened, his eyes narrowing as he looked Julian up and down. He strode over, his presence designed to intimidate. "What's the problem here?" "No problem, Captain," Julian replied, his voice still level. "I'm in my assigned seat." Riggs didn't even glance at the proffered phone. "I'm afraid there's been an error. We have a weight distribution issue. I need this seat empty. You'll be moving to the economy." Julian didn't blink. The lie was so flimsy it was almost insulting. He scanned the half-empty cabin. "There are 3 other empty first-class seats. Which one would you prefer I take to solve this? Weight issue?" A flush crept up Riggs's neck. "I don't have time for games. This is my aircraft, and I am ordering you to move. Now." The public humiliation was a hot coal in Julian's chest, but years of discipline kept his exterior perfectly calm. He knew that any display of anger would only confirm their biased narrative. "As a paying first-class passenger, I'm entitled to this seat. Unless you can show me a legitimate, documented safety or operational concern, I'll be remaining right here." Riggs leaned in close, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper, meant for Julian's ears alone. "Listen to me. I don't know how you got a ticket for this seat or who you think you are, but people like you don't belong up here. You have 5 seconds to get to the back of the plane or I will have security physically remove you. Do you understand?" At that moment, Julian saw the man's true character. Not a professional pilot, but a petty tyrant hiding behind a uniform and a veneer of authority. Arguing was pointless. The system in this enclosed metal tube was rigged in the captain's favor. "Very well," Julian said, standing slowly and gathering his bag. "I'll deplane." A triumphant smirk touched Riggs's lips. "A wise decision." He turned to Dana. "Get this sorted quickly. I want to push back on schedule." The jet bridge was a sterile, fluorescent-lit limbo. The hum of the aircraft's auxiliary power unit vibrated through the floor. The moment the cabin door hissed shut behind him, the calm passenger vanished, and the CEO emerged. Julian Thorne became a study in controlled, efficient fury. He pulled out his phone, but he wasn't opening a social media app to complain. He was accessing a secure, encrypted portal to the Apex Global Operational Network. His fingers, steady and precise, navigated through layers of dashboards. First, he pulled the crew manifest for Flight 422, Captain James Riggs, 28 years of service. He cross-referenced it with the internal HR database. A string of passenger complaints, unprofessional attitude, dismissive to crew, created a hostile environment. All had been quietly buried, marked resolved by a superior who was now the vice president of flight operations. A pattern of protection. A rotten branch on the corporate tree. Next, he accessed the real-time maintenance log for the aircraft, tail number N804Z. His eyes, trained to spot anomalies in complex data streams, found it within seconds. A minor, deferred issue with a hydraulic pressure indicator. Code 78, Bravo. The paperwork was 99% complete, but it was missing the mandatory secondary sign-off from the lead line mechanic. A tiny bureaucratic oversight. The kind that happened every day and was almost always forgiven, but Julian was a man who built his empire on details. In aviation, details were everything. A missing signature wasn't just a formality. It was a breach of a federally mandated protocol. It was a crack, and a crack was all he needed. He dialed a number from memory, the direct line to the Apex Global 24/7 Operations Command Center. The nerve center of his entire travel empire, a voice answered instantly. Ops Command. Agent Miller, this is Julian Thorne. Authorization code Tango Niner Zulu 42. There was a barely perceptible hitch in the operator's breath. Verified. Go ahead, Mr. Thorne. His instructions were crisp, clear, and utterly final. Ground Flight 422 immediately. Flag a critical violation on maintenance code 78 Bravo for tail number N804Z. Captain Riggs and his first officer are to be relieved of duty pending an immediate safety review. Dispatch a replacement aircraft and a fresh crew from the standby pool. I want this executed in the next 5 minutes. Executing now, sir. He ended the call. The entire process had taken 3 minutes. Back on the plane, a smug satisfaction had settled over the first-class cabin. Captain Riggs was making an announcement over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've resolved a minor passenger documentation issue. We should be pushing back shortly, and I'll make up the time in the air. Thank you for your patience. He had just replaced the handset when the cockpit phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the cabin. Riggs answered, his expression shifting from mild annoyance to confusion, then to dawning, stomach-churning horror. What? On whose authority? He barked into the receiver, his voice losing its professional cadence. He listened, his face draining of color. That's a technicality. You can't just... The main cabin door hissed open again. Every head turned as Julian Thorne stepped back inside. The atmosphere shifted palpably. He didn't look at the gawking passengers. His focus was entirely on the cockpit. He walked forward with a purpose that silenced the remaining whispers. Riggs stumbled out of the cockpit, his confidence shattered. You, he whispered, the word a stunned exhalation. Me, Julian confirmed, his voice calm but carrying to every corner of the silent cabin. Captain Riggs, you are relieved of command. Effective immediately. You can't do this. Riggs sputtered, a desperate last-ditch attempt to reclaim control. I just did, Julian said, his tone icy. He addressed the entire cabin, his words measured and precise. Not for your unprofessionalism, not for your blatant prejudice, but for a failure to adhere to Zenith Airlines Maintenance Protocol 78 Bravo. Your log entry for the hydraulic indicator was incomplete. In aviation, we don't cut corners. Not on maintenance, and certainly not on the truth. The brilliance of the move was not lost on the more astute passengers. He hadn't fired him for racism. He had checkmated him on a point of irrefutable procedure. Riggs was trapped. To argue was to admit he was lax on safety. 2 security officers, alerted by Ops Command, appeared at the front of the cabin. The sight of them broke the last of Riggs's resolve. His shoulders slumped, the arrogant captain replaced by a stunned, defeated man. As security escorted him away, Julian turned to Dana, the flight attendant who had started it all. She looked pale, her hands trembling slightly. "Please deplane all passengers," Julian instructed, his voice returning to a professional, almost gentle tone. "They will be rebooked on a new aircraft with a new crew. Full compensation and a voucher for their significant inconvenience. Their comfort and safety remain our absolute priority." Then, his eyes found the young flight attendant who had served him a glass of water with a genuine smile before the confrontation, the only crew member who had treated him like a human being. She was standing near the galley, her expression a mixture of shock and awe. "Your name?" Julian asked. "Chloe, sir," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "Chloe, I'll be speaking with the director of in-flight service. I believe your skills are wasted here. There's a position in our—" 20 minutes later, Julian stood at the massive window of the gate area, watching as a replacement Boeing 787 was towed into position. The moonlit tarmac was a ballet of coordinated activity. He called his head of human resources. "I want a full, independent audit of every flight crew file," he said, his gaze fixed on the new, diverse crew boarding the aircraft. "Start with everyone Captain Riggs and his protector in flight ops has personally recommended for promotion. And I want a new mandatory training program implemented company-wide, not just compliance, but actual, measurable cultural competency. We're not just fixing a problem. We're changing the culture." He ended the call as Chloe approached, holding out a fresh bottle of water. "I thought you might need this, Mr. Thorne." He accepted it with a faint, tired smile. "Thank you, Chloe, and it's Julian." She hesitated for a moment, then voiced the question hanging in the air. "Sir, was it really about the maintenance log?" Julian watched the new captain, a woman in her 40s with a confident stride, greet the gate agent. He saw the passengers beginning to form a new, orderly line, many of them glancing his way with looks of respect. "The maintenance issue was real," he said quietly, turning back to her. "The protocol was breached. But you're right. It was the key that unlocked the door. Prejudice like Riggs's often hides behind petty authority and complex systems. You can't always fight it with a shout. Sometimes you have to be smarter. You have to know the system better than they do, and you have to be willing to use that knowledge." The gate agent announced the start of the boarding process for the new flight. As passengers began to move, a well-dressed man from business class paused beside Julian. "That was incredible," the man said, offering his hand. "Thank you." Julian shook it. "No," he replied, his voice firm. "Thank you for your patience. This is what accountability looks like." He picked up his laptop bag. The billionaire CEO was once again just a passenger. But the message had been delivered, a thunderclap of justice in 12 silent minutes. A reminder that dignity is never negotiable, and that those who mistake kindness for weakness often learn the hardest lessons of all.